Hello, everybody. Michael Robertson Jr. here. This is episode 21 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. And of course, I have with me this evening my co-host, the man himself, Mr. Jason Collins.
Hello, listeners. And Michael, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Awesome. So good. So excited to talk about this movie with you.
You know, I am pretty excited to talk about this movie too. But let's have a little bit of a cold open here. How you holding up there?
Is it a cold open if you call it a cold open? Like if you tell it what it is, does it still count as a cold open?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm gonna go for it.
Okay. What's your question? How am I doing?
Yeah, how are you holding up, man? You seem distraught.
I'm not distraught. I just got a lot going on. I just have a lot going on at work. I have a lot of writing stuff on my brain, stuff I've been working on there. We have the podcast, of course. I played a very shitty round of golf today. Better than the round that I played with you 2 weeks ago, but still not really up to my liking. Okay. And now it's time to record a podcast episode. So
Okay. Yeah, I meant to ask how your round went today.
It was okay. It's funny how we've been playing golf a long time. I think we started about the same time. We were 18 years old, and it's like, well, first of all, everybody that's listening to us right now is like, are these two fools really going to start talking about golf in our fucking horror podcast? Like, get to the point. But listen, anyway,
it's our podcast. We can talk about whatever the hell we want to. Okay.
I could just see the listeners dropping off now. It ebbs and flows. I go in streaks. Well, for the longest time, I was just terrible. We both were. And then I do have these peaks and valleys where I get decent and then I get really decent and I'm really happy for like a month or two. And then it comes crashing down for a few weeks and then it starts to slowly build back up again. Consistency is just so hard in that game.
Yeah, it's a tough game. As we have talked about many times, I play once, maybe twice a year. I always come in really strong with a good first round, maybe even just like good first 9. Yeah. And then after that, it all kind of falls apart.
Right. We need to see if there's
it's a tough game.
We need to see if there's any horror films that revolve around golf. I am not aware of any. Are you?
Oh, that's interesting. I can't think of any off the top of my head. We might have to do a little research there.
Right. Okay. Otherwise, yeah, all is well. I did drop some of the new merchandise with the graphic that you helped me create last week that we talked about on our episode about whatever we watched last week. The Relic, yeah. So right. That was exciting. Some people have already posted some pictures of them getting theirs in, so that's kind of cool.
No way. That's awesome.
I haven't even gotten mine yet. Somebody posted a picture on my Facebook group today with their new shirt, and I was like, yeah, I'm still waiting on mine. So we'll see.
Funny. Well, I'm glad that came out.
I think I'm going to, I ordered 2. I'm going to see which material I like better. I may just order like all of them in all the colors and just have a new uniform. It might just be my new shirt that I wear for everything. It's just my own like logo. Just your
own silhouette.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull a Steve Jobs and just in a Mark Zuckerberg and just wear the same thing every day.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of shirts, I think I did mention last podcast that I had ordered some horror shirts from T Fury, and I have yet to get them in. I mean, it's been weeks now at this point.
Some of the t-shirt places have been pretty far behind, I think. I don't know if it's because of not being at full production or what, and some of them do like the print runs where like they accumulate the orders and then they do the run and then they ship it. So who knows? I'm glad you said T Fury though, because I was actually looking for a t-shirt just yesterday and I could not remember the name of the site that I got my horror t-shirts from, and that was it, T Fury. So
they got a good selection.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else like real interesting to talk about. But
what are you drinking tonight?
Black coffee.
Oh, just going for the hard stuff.
Right. Yeah, just it should be spiked with something probably at this point in my life, but it's not. Like it's.
I've got a glass of wine. You can't see it. The camera can see it.
Fucking sophisticated tonight. A glass of wine. Man,
I don't know. I just, the beer was sitting heavy on me and I just didn't feel like getting my whiskey out. So wine was the next in line.
I didn't even know you drank wine. When did you start drinking wine? Who are you?
Years ago.
Don't act like it's been years. You haven't.
It has been years. It's not all the time though. I go maybe like once or twice a year. I'll get on a wine kick.
So you drink wine as often as you play golf.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, though the two have never mixed. I only play golf down at the beach when we ever go. But speaking of which, we should get to our movie now.
We should. And I should say this is probably, I think we did this with one other movie. You and I have discussed this movie absolutely zero before recording this podcast.
Even said the first thing about it. Then you just sent me a text saying something about the horror, the body horror.
Yeah, it was a meme that I sent you yesterday when I was or day before when I was watching it. We usually, at least, like, even if we don't get to have a full conversation, even before, as we're setting up to record, we're usually like, hey, what'd you think? And we might just spill a few details, but we've got nothing.
Yeah,
I have no
excited
idea
to talk about it.
No idea what your opinion is on this. So this will be fun. What's the movie, Jason? Tell us, please. Stop keeping us in suspense.
All right. So tonight's movie is titled The Beach House, the 2019 version. There's quite a few beach houses out there, movie-wise. Right.
Yep.
So this is The Beach House, 2019. It was released last year, 2019, with some festivals, and then it hit streaming service Shudder just a few weeks ago, I believe.
Yep. It debuted at film festivals, and then I think this is its actual run out on any streaming service. Shudder bought the rights, and I think now it's hitting the masses for the first time. So
yeah. So this was a good movie. Let's a little bit about it here. A romantic getaway for two troubled college sweethearts turns into a struggle for survival when unexpected guests and the surrounding environment exhibit signs of a mysterious infection.
Yes. Written and directed by Jeffrey A. Brown. This is his directorial debut. I checked him out on IMDb. This dude has a ton of credits as what was it? Something manager. That wasn't production manager. It was something that was very much a behind the scenes guy for a film production. He's got a ton of these, and then all of a sudden he's got this writer-director credit for this. So this is obviously a guy that's been in the film industry, kind of hands-off, I guess, for a while.
Well, I was listening to an interview with him, and he's been in the industry for 20 or 30 years now.
Wow, okay.
And he's done quite a few shorts, and he's participated in a lot of big feature films. He's been on, in that industry on set for a long time.
Right. So this is his shot at making something. So it's pretty cool.
And this was from what I can remember, this was really a labor of love. This movie, I think he wrote it back in 2011.
Jeez.
Or at least started writing it back then. And I think he made a small short for it a couple years after that, just to kind of get some support for it. And then it finally hit support, and they started recording. I think it was 2017, as well as I can remember, around there. And then it finally came out. And I could be wrong about that. It might have been 18, and then it finally was able to get some eyeballs in 2019.
Yeah, it debuted at the Brooklyn Horror Festival in October of last year of 2019, and this is starring Liana Liberato, Noah LaGrosse, and Jake Weber, among others. There's one more main character, the woman, the older woman. I forget her name in the movie.
Jane.
Yeah. So those are the four main people. We don't see a whole lot of people on screen, at least not.
No, you really don't
in their normal state. So.
It had a really strong, independent, small scale feel to it with how few people were actually seen in the film.
Yeah, which always works to the advantage of indie films because it's just a lot less to manage. And it looks like, just off the IMDb trivia, they also, in terms of just, I guess, sticking to that smaller budget, they shot it at one of the producer's father's homes in Cape Cod during the off season. So I mean, kind of it's kind of cool. I mean, you can see it in the film. I mean, but it did not suffer in any way from lower budget. I thought it was really. I actually thought it had some really amazing cinematography at certain times. Some really interesting. It has some amazing lockdown shots. Just the way they lingered sometimes. We can get into that. But yeah, it was It was interesting. It was interesting. I don't want to give away too much of my opinion yet because I'm curious to see what you think. But yeah, that's the run of the who made it, where it came from, and I guess where do you want to start with this, Jason? We did watch the trailer for this, didn't we? We watched the trailer for this one of our Patreon trailer impressions episodes.
We did,
and so we wanted to watch it, and I guess this is the second movie in a row we've reviewed that came from one of our trailer impressions videos, because last week we did Relic, which we also did. So what I'll just go ahead and flat out ask you, what did you think of the movie? Give me your very, very brief overall opinion of this film.
So we watched the trailer, like you said, and I came in with honestly little to low expectations. It's not like I wasn't like looking forward to seeing the movie. I just wasn't expecting much from it.
Sure.
But man, not only did it just blow my expectations away, I really, really enjoyed this film a lot. I mean, there was parts of it that it would be categorized as body horror. Mm-hmm. I heard the term cosmic horror a couple times, but the body horror was not, there wasn't a lot of it.
There really wasn't. No,
there wasn't a lot of it. And honestly, I really liked this movie. It was a good premise, a very like color out of space feel to it. And it was, I just really enjoyed it. It looked beautiful. It was just beautifully shot. The actors did a great job. The main actor, or the main character, Emily, played by Liana Liberto, she did fucking fantastic. I mean, she just carried this whole movie on her back, and to be just like a strong female lead character, really taking on that role where there was a male character, and she was literally carrying him throughout the movie a few times. I mean, it was good to see that too. I loved everything about the movie. I thought the story was good. I thought it paced really well. The first 10 or 10 or 15 minutes were a bit slow, but I don't know if I'd call it a slow burn, because it didn't really end with a big bang. But the end was, I have mixed feelings about the end, but I did not like the ending either too. So overall, I really enjoyed the movie.
Okay. Good. I was really curious to see where you were going to fall on this. I know we drew a line in the sand last week, and you and I were on opposite sides for Relic. And I will flat out tell you right now, even though Relic had a really, really strong ending, I think the ending of Relic was by far the best point. And I'm not even talking about all the shit that was going down in the fun house, as you called it. I just mean that last moment where everything kind of comes to a head, and they have the moment in the bedroom with the grandmother. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. This movie right here, this low budget Shudder exclusive called The Beach House, better than Relic. Now, I don't love the turn this movie took. I have problems with the last 25%, maybe even the last third of this movie. But overall, I enjoyed watching this movie so much more than Relic, which is getting so much praise, from the critic circle, which we talked about. We're not going to beat this dead horse, because we really hashed out our opinions on Relic last week, and it's not a bad movie. But we talked about pacing, and to be completely honest with you as well, if you want to talk about character development, now buckle up for a second.
Okay.
Again, it falls apart at the end. Yeah. The character development in this movie, stronger than Relic. These four characters in this movie, for the little bit of time you get to spend with them, these people better, and you have a better understanding of who they are and what they're doing than you do the three main characters in Relic. And
I completely agree with that. And we've said it many, many times. It really agreeing with, I believe it was Stephen King that said it. You've got to care about the character before you can feel anything about what's happening to them.
Yes, I really, 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 really enjoyed the buildup of this movie. I mean, you just learned about these people. You were with them. It was an intimate setting. It was a night. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Jaws, just the Amity Island feel of the house and the color that they had.
I think it was the coloring.
Yeah.
The coloring felt so familiar, didn't it?
Yeah. I liked the two main leads, the younger couple. I was pleasantly surprised with the older couple because you don't see them a ton in the trailer. And we talked about this because we read the synopsis during the trailer impressions episode where we were like, we don't really understand who the older couple are. And we thought maybe they were potentially antagonists to a certain degree.
Yeah, exactly. I was expecting them to be sort of the bad people here, but
yeah. And especially the way that they're first introduced. There's this really awkward, like, what exactly is going on here? Moment. And I believe a lot of it has to do with Weber. You know, his portrayal of that main character in the beginning was very. Do I trust this guy? Does he have an ulterior motive? I mean, I even went like so far initially to think maybe they were doing like a M. Night Shyamalan The Visit fake out, and these people weren't who they said they were, and they weren't really supposed to be there, kind of thing. Yeah. And that quickly gets squashed. But it was a really interesting introduction to them. But you got four players on the table here, and you know who they are, and they all have a life. You learn their life in the build-up. And is it a slow burn? A little bit, but the good news is this movie is so short. I don't even know if you can call it a slow burn. I mean,
yeah, and that's why I was saying I don't know if it was really a slow burn. The first like 10 or 15 minutes, there's not a whole lot going on other than you just being introduced to all four of the characters and kind of what's going on. Which I love the way they met at an intersection there. How they both showed up at the house thinking that nobody else was going to be there, which ultimately just was just a mistake. And I love that so much about this. Like there was so much about the film that just was normal everyday stuff that had nothing to do with the actual movie itself. Right. Like the antagonist of the movie. So I just really loved how it was just you were just sort of like a fly on the wall of things like happening right there in that first 20 or 25 minutes.
Right. Again, you were just becoming engrossed in the story of the characters of who these people were. Now, was it a little, I did think it was maybe a little too perfect that the girl was this aspiring, whatever she said she was, super biologist talking about these alternate lives and planets and bacteria and like, it was kind of weird that like she just happens to be the one that we're following in this descent into this ecological disaster, especially when at the end of the day it really didn't matter at all, and that kind of leads into something that I'll talk about later with the last half of this movie. But still, like they were all flawed in their own way, and you felt something for each of them, and like you said, you were really enjoying your time with them, and that was something I never felt with Relic. I just never cared about any of them. And if you think about it, aside from the grandmother, who clearly is being afflicted with dementia, you really knew nothing about the mother and the granddaughter. I mean, they were just cardboard people that were just there to serve the purpose to drive, the theme of that movie forward. And we talked about it, kind of showing different perspectives of how they would deal with it.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Michael, I want to go ahead and just challenge you to stop comparing this movie to Relic now, because we already hashed our opinions of Relic a lot. So we're not actually comparing it to Relic directly. That's not what this podcast is about. We're really just talking about the beach house.
You're right, but to me, it's a very easy point to drive home because we talked about it last week. Critics love Relic. This has stronger characters. So what are critics looking at with their ratings? Is this a great movie? No. But I mean, in terms of investment, I felt more invested in this movie from the beginning. So that's my point. Like, why is it that horror is such a difficult genre for critics to critique? And you got people like you and me, I mean, who have watched so much horror over the years. I have read so much horror over the years and just so many books in general. And it always comes down to character. Mm-hmm. And to me, this movie was just stronger. So to me, I'm not trying to compare it, but at the same time I am, because we're reviewing movies on this podcast. And I'm just genuinely curious why people fucking love Relic so much. And this movie is actually not getting a ton of praise. It's got some decent reviews, but a lot of people are just like, oh, this is dumb. Like, and the end of it is, I think, where it falls apart. But again, I'm not bitter. I just don't understand it. I don't understand where the critics are coming from with the disparity of how they're looking at different types of horror movies.
Yeah, I am sticking to the one point that we made in that the horror movies that seem to be making or getting any kind of traction are the horror movies that are more family horror, where they're revolving around like a family drama that people can relate to, and really find those threads that they can really hold on to and make it real, you know?
Right.
Stuff like this, people can enjoy it, but they can't really what's the word? What am I going for? They can't dive in emotionally to it. And that's where I think that's where the difference is. You can get really emotionally invested into the story of Relic because you might actually know somebody that's going through dementia, and that, you know, and kind of feel that horror on a different level. You can't really get involved emotionally into this kind of film because why would you? But you can get involved, like emotionally involved with the character building. And I get that. I think it's just two separate things to really get emotionally involved in. And the ones that where you can get more involved with the story tend to do better with critics, apparently.
Agreed. And I'm not saying that overall this movie is better than Relic because, you know, again, the end of it does turn into a little bit of a B movie, kind of like Fright Fest. But I just think it's interesting. I definitely enjoyed my time with these characters more than last week's film. There, I'll stop mentioning it by name. So
okay.
But yeah, we have these two couples, the young couple, and they're troubled. And see, this is something that I actually did really enjoy about this movie. They did not, again, it's very short, less than an hour and a half. They didn't ever drag anything down with exposition. Everything, for the most part, most of the stuff that you learned about these characters was really done very subtly. It was through conversation, through things that were unsaid, you know, just pickups of conversations that they had left off that we hadn't heard. But you inferred what they were talking about and what had happened. So we've got a troubled young couple. You've got, you know, the head on her shoulders, go get 'em, you know, female protagonist who's going back to school and very intelligent, obviously. You got her boyfriend who they've been together for a while, it seems, and it seems like he has kind of fallen off the wagon of, you know, the traditional path. He is no longer interested in school. He is trying to bring her down with him, it seems like, which is always very frustrating. I actually almost texted you. I did almost text you this part when I was watching it. I was going to say this guy needs to be in a bear suit in a barn burning up because
I know. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, we have another asshole boyfriend. Great.
Yeah, back to Midsommar all over again. Because he was. I mean, this dude clearly, I think he cared about this girl more so than the guy in Midsommar cared about his girlfriend. But I think this guy was struggling with the path that he was taking, pulling him away from her, and he was trying to cling on to her and bring her with him. So
yeah, he was trying to go down this path where, you know, he didn't want to fall into the social norm.
Right.
You know, he wanted to just, you know, at one point he was like, let's just stay here at the beach house and vacation forever.
Yeah. I mean, a little unrealistic. Young and naive is probably the best word for it. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with thinking there's alternate paths, but he was definitely kind of quickly going to nowhere, it seemed. Yeah. But again, it seemed like he cared for her, so you felt the tension there. You know, they were interesting combination. You could kind of see her thinking maybe it was time to pull away, but she was kind of sticking around too. It was a very midsummerish couple all over again to a certain degree, although she didn't seem to have the baggage that the girl did in Midsommar. So they were good. It was an interesting couple, and then they meet the elderly couple who you also learn that basically because of this guy's decision, he's had a fallout with his father. So you're learning all these little nuances of their personal lives without a lot of it actually being said, you know, to your face. And then the elderly couple, they're there, and you quickly realize that, the woman has health issues. They never specifically say what it is. You can only guess at what it is, but she's heavily medicated, obviously near the end of her life, and they're just trying to have some fun together before the end comes. You just care about these people. You learned so much about them.
Yeah, you're right. They really didn't need to dive into a lot of exposition about any one of the characters, and especially about the older couple too. Just the little things that they were dropping in, especially with the medicine cabinet, and the way that the husband really felt like he needed to take care of her. You knew something was wrong with her, but you never really dive into it. And I really like that mysterious part of their relationship and who they were. And to be truthful, this whole movie kind of revolved around a lot of mystery because you never really find out what's going on.
Right. Yeah. And it escalates quickly. This movie turns on a dime. I mean, just fast in terms of what's happening.
Well, in general, this movie really wasn't about the contagion. It really wasn't about that infectious disease that was going on or the cosmic, thing that was happening. It was more following the story. We just kind of like piggybacked on this young couple that was going into the beach house to try to rekindle things or figure out what was going on or figure out the next steps in their career, in their relationship. And they happened to stumble across another couple, and we watched that happening. And then throughout the rest of the movie, something was happening, but you're really just kind of focusing on them and their survival, and ultimately her survival, and kind of what was going on from there. It very rarely dove into what was actually happening in the world, which it was like a world thing that was going on.
Right. Yeah. They never tried. It's always good. They never tried to explain the phenomenon. They never say this is what's happening. She never tried to use her science, to really figure out what was happening. There wasn't like newscasts they were watching, like the garner any real information. It was just this mysterious, hey, there's something in the air, there's something growing, and it's messing us up. And that's fine. Yeah. Like we don't need to know. What do we care? This isn't a biology textbook. Like, let us have fun with it. Where do you want to go from here? I think we've established at the beginning of this movie, leading up to where it kind of quickly crumbles, in terms of the world they're living in. Do you want to talk about? Before, I want to wait for our discussion on the end or the climax, so to speak, after the break. But let's talk about something that really did kind of stand out to me in this film, and that was the cinematography. I didn't look to see who the cinematographer was. I probably should have, because I thought there was some really interesting camera movements and some really interesting composition that was done here that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, I thought the cinematography was just beautiful. Like you said, they had a lot that like was locked down on it. Cinematography was Owen Level, and he definitely needs some praise in this movie. They did a phenomenal job, and even the director during the interview, he was talking about how much he enjoyed this whole process. One of his most favorite parts of this was just the collaborative effort, and he mentioned his production designer. He mentioned the wardrobe. He mentioned the cinematographer quite a few times. Just how there were so many shots, and then like he had the storyboard and this idea of how he wanted things to go, but then there was so much in the movie. There was a few things in the movie that he would see there where the cinematographer would just make a move or do a shot that he had never planned for, but it was just beautiful, and it just made so much sense to the story. Not only it just being beautiful, but it aided to the story so much. So I just love that how these things can be such a collaborative effort in overall.
Right.
And he did a great job. I thought just the way that they shot everything, in that, just making it look so bright and so carefree and warm, and because I think that was one thing. It was supposed to be overly warm. The whole thing. I think whatever was going on was probably, I think, affecting the climate overall. And so it did. It just felt just so warm and inviting. And so it was like this clash, this juxtaposition of like this beautiful beach scene and beautiful water, and then having this just awful thing happening, while you're there. Yeah, and I think that's He actually said that's what inspired the story was going into, like, it was those times where you go on vacation and something terrible happens. Like he said, there was one time, I think one of the situations, him in general, where he and a girlfriend went on a vacation in order to get away together and be together, and that ended up being the catalyst to their breakup. So it was just, or going to like Vegas and then being sick in the hotel the whole time.
Right.
He said that happened too. He said that was really what drove this story, was he wanted to go on vacation to this beautiful place, and then something terrible happened while you're there and not be able to enjoy the vacation.
Yeah. The color, we touched on it just very briefly in the beginning, but it really did look to me like Jaws. I mean, the scenes in the beginning of Jaws where we see, Chief Brody driving down the road away from his house, the daytime beach scenes where they find, Chrissy's body in the beginning, like the color seemed very similar to me. I of course, that always made me happy because favorite movie, hello. But yeah, it had a really good look to it that was aesthetically pleasing right from the get-go, which, again, quickly falls apart. The lockdown shots and some of the stuff that they had framed, I really enjoyed the shot where they're on the beach the following morning, after this contagion has come ashore and really started to set in. And Jake Weber's character, Mitch, he is, he outwardly, he seems like he's kind of okay, but he's not. He's a little off. And the scene where he just walks into the water forever until he just is completely submerged. I love that. I actually was kind of bummed that they cut away for just one glimpse back to her as he was walking. I really, really wish they would have just stuck there with you for like 30 seconds and just watched him just keep walking and completely go under. But it was still a really, really cool shot. I stuff like that. There was more than one occasion where the camera didn't move at all. They just stuck you somewhere for a while and you just watched something unfold.
Yeah. Those are those kind of scenes that will stick with you for a long time. I mean, that's, if I had to think of one or two of that whole entire movie, that's definitely one of them that I'll remember.
Yeah,
it was a really, really great scene. I mean, it seemed like it took forever for him to get out there before he was completely submerged.
Yeah,
and it was such a just a beautiful, uncomfortable scene to watch.
Yeah, and it's a ballsy thing to pull off too. We talked about in our Midsommar episode, we talked about patience, right? Like the not rushing the story and to let it really just unfold and to linger, and how that can be uncomfortable sometimes for the audience, to how that can be an awkward thing to watch, but it builds that tension, and you don't see it, I don't think, as often as I would like to in horror. I think there's, for some reason, maybe a lot of people think they have to be doing these dynamic movements and they have to have all these different, coverage of shots to really, make it seem like they're doing something cool. Mm-hmm. But man, how effective are some of those just single, one shot lockdown like that? I mean, we definitely saw very similar stuff that Ari Aster did in Midsommar.
Yeah, this movie, it felt like it just had a really well thought out shot list. I loved how in the very beginning, how it was just that one lingering shot of the long road, and the car comes in, it pulls into the driveway, the camera just pans with the car, mm-hmm. and then the next shot is just them, it's inside the car in the back seat, sort of, and seeing them drive up the driveway.
Right.
I thought it was so, just the simplicity of it also aided towards it making it feel like a small, intimate indie film, where you don't have a billion angles of the same thing going on. Yeah. It's just so simple and to the point. And it was like that throughout the whole movie. And I love that.
Yeah. It just kind of makes you feel like you're there with them versus I'm watching a movie, I mean, there's a difference. I mean, you're watching a movie either way, but like there's an intimacy, like you said, where it's just real simple stuff and there's not a lot going on, but you're just there with the characters like a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah, that opening shot, I actually thought the same thing when I was watching it. I was like, oh, this is already a cool shot, just watching this thing come in. So
yeah. So for anybody that, if I was going to recommend this, hopefully anybody that's watching this or listening to this has already seen it. But I would tell them to get through the first 20 to 30 minutes because things are a little bit slower. You are, learning the characters at that point. But then once shit hits the fan, I mean, it happens, right? It's nonstop after that.
Right. Well, I think it's a good time to take a break then. We've kind of hit we can recap very quickly when we come back where we've gotten to this, how we've gotten to this point, and then where the movie really just completely does a 180 and starts taking off. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back. All right, we're back. So we had the build up in the beginning, probably the first, 40, maybe even 50 minutes of this movie. Was it an hour? Because it was only an hour and like 28 minutes total. So it very well could have been up to an hour of this movie, maybe, was getting to the beach house, meeting the characters. They have the wild night where they trip on the drugs that this kid gives them. And that's when we see that really cool night shot where they go out in the patio and we see the luminescence in the air of this bacteria, whatever it is, that is coming off the water and saturating and just coating everything with this, glow, which was, very pretty, but very deadly. And then the next day, everything starts to go downhill pretty fast. Whatever this thing is, it has gotten into the elderly characters for sure. I shouldn't say elderly, the older couple for sure. And they start very quickly experiencing some, the man kind of has some mental, it seems like, issues happening where he's kind of not really sure what's going on. And he has some very rash decisions, i.e. drowning himself in the ocean.
Yeah, that was a little odd. They didn't show anybody else behaving that way.
No.
So I'm not sure if that had to do with him just accepting that something was wrong and he was gonna just end it before it got worse. Or maybe he saw that, maybe he had even glimpsed it no, he hadn't done it by then. I don't know. I don't know why he made that decision because he had not seen his wife turn into what she had turned into before that. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was odd. Clearly she's being heavily affected. And then the boyfriend, he is having some issues as well, where he's having some stomach trouble, it seems like, and he gets in the house.
He ate that oyster the night before.
Yeah. And, it kind of turns into a little bit of a zombie flick at this point to me. A little bit of a like Night of the Living Dead kind of.
There was a little bit of that. There was quite a few different subgenres that were mixed into this movie, which made it fun. You had the body horror, you had the zombie stuff going on, you had the cosmic horror.
Yeah.
But yeah, the zombie piece was interesting. You never really knew kind of what was going to happen if they did get a hold of you.
Right.
Other than that one scene in the basement, which I still don't understand what was going on down there, but it was pretty gross.
It seemed to me, we could, from what I can gather, because she pulled that. By the way, that was the scene I was watching when I sent you the meme where she was, because the girl, when she's worried about Emily, when she's worried about Jake Weber's character, drowning himself, she gets up and she basically takes off after him. She steps on this thing, this, I don't know what it was, some washed up sea creature that I guess has been affected by this.
It looked like a squid of some sort.
There's tons of them too.
Yeah,
I thought it was a jellyfish at first, but it was kind of big. I don't know what it was, but she steps on it. It's clearly, overrun and infected with this thing. And it's got like this parasite kind of creature that instantly like burrows into her foot and is like going in. So she has this really kind of gruesome scene where she's extracting that from herself, and it's very long and it's very cringy. Which, by the way, like we said, this is supposed to be this was dubbed a body horror film by people I saw before it was released. That is really the only piece of it to me that seemed like it was body horror. That one scene.
Yeah, that was the only piece, and also, that also they showed part of that in the trailer, and I wonder if that was probably where people were getting the idea that this was going to be some sort of body horror.
Yeah.
But the director, he did mention that a lot of this, Jeffrey Brown, he tried to do most of this practical,
right?
Practical effects. Being in the industry so long, he's seen that arc, right? Go from, practical effects where all the remakes of like The Blob and stuff back in the 80s and 90s, to transition into CGI. and so he's a fan of the practical effects. Though he said they did have to do a little CGI, and he said he thinks they had to do more than people think, and so if you don't notice it, if you don't see it, then they did a good job. But as far as I can tell, the foot was practical. It looked pretty gross. I mean, you were up in it. It was a pretty nasty scene.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to start into this, but like I said, the last part of this movie is really just them fleeing for their lives. The older couple, Mitch is gone. He's in the ocean. Jane, is that the older lady's name?
Yeah, Jane.
Okay, so we're assuming she doesn't make it. She tries to chase them out of the house. She turns. Yeah, she becomes full on like zombie come after you, Walking Dead kind of thing. And,
crawling dead. None of these things walk.
Yeah, it's true. We never saw them walk. You're right. They were all crawling. So our two main characters, they do manage to escape, and they start heading wherever they can go. They're just trying to get out of the main house because the lady's there and she's trying to eat them apparently. Yeah. And that's really the only thing we see for the rest of this film is just them fleeing, trying to find some place to be. And night falls and it's just foggy and dark. And to me, it almost just turns into a zombie movie. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Like to me, It was just a really I don't know how many fog machines they had to use for this film, but man, that was some thick atmosphere. I think you couldn't even see stuff half the time.
Well, that was actually part of what was going on.
Right. I mean, because it was in the air.
This whatever this contagion was, once it got a hold of you, there was no turning back. There was, and it didn't take long apparently to really take you over.
Right.
Except for Randall, it seemed to take a while for him.
Yeah.
And maybe that was just for the story, but but it wasn't only physical, her having, them eating the oysters and it taking over. Her getting, directly into it, when she walked into the woods there over the radio, when she was talking, they had mentioned, have you been exposed to the fog? So the fog, apparently it had rolled off of the ocean, and I guess it evolved, it evaporated into this thick fog, and it was just going around. And as soon as you got into the fog, it was getting into your lungs and infecting you. So that fog played a big part in the way it was affecting or infecting people. So, right. Which makes it, which actually served a couple different purposes, being able to have atmosphere, extra atmosphere in any shot that they had, but also being able to pretty much limit where you needed to frame things. You had so much fog, you could really sort of be anywhere. They were only maybe what, 3 locations if you count the beach.
Yeah exactly.
So I think that helped a lot in that regard.
Yeah, you couldn't see a whole lot. And I will say that's one thing that I have found a little bit with Shudder that has been off for me is I'm going off on a small tangent here. I don't know what Shudder's bit rate or their stream quality is, but it's not great. If you renting
Blacks do not do well.
No, you rent a movie from iTunes, stuff like that. Even HBO Max's streaming quality is actually much higher than it seems the old HBO Now app used to be before they made that rebranding transition with all the new stuff. You can definitely see a quality difference, which is unfortunate for movies like this because you kind of need the dark to be clear. You need to see what's going on. This did get hit a little bit by that to make it difficult to see, but it also kind of worked for this film because they couldn't see either. I mean, they were kind of just feeling their way through. But yeah, this turns into basically them fleeing. It turns into almost a post-apocalyptic film very quickly, along with the zombies, where the roads are kind of just empty. They find abandoned vehicles. The houses, they're running up to a house they go in, which has been I guess kind of vacated. They come across a couple other of the creatures, people that have been infected. All the while, like you said, Randall is progressively getting worse, and Emily is staying resilient. For the most part, they're doing their best to be cautious. The scene in the basement. Let's talk about that for a second. So I also was like, what is going on here? And my interpretation of it was that whatever was inside of the person and growing eventually grew and then came out and became this other thing. That was the way to me that it kind of looked, because it was not like it was almost humanoid in form, but not quite. And it was just
Yeah, it reminded me of The Blob. I mean,
right.
the way that movie kind of turned out, or at least the way that scene ended up happening, because it looked like there was two people.
There was one
there.
down on the ground. That the guy
One
that
on
the
the ground.
thing,
It looked like somebody was on top of it.
Yeah, the thing on
Right?
top. I thought that thing was eating that person. See, I thought that was like the parasite.
Eating or consuming in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely like taking it over or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was pretty gruesome. I mean, and we talked about this a second ago. Like, we don't really fully understand anything that was actually going on with all of this, and it was fine. It works for this kind of movie, and that's great. You don't have to explain it. I will say though that the thing that knocked this movie off a peg for me was, well, again, I really enjoyed it. All the buildup of character in the beginning, or the first 2/3 of the movie, meant absolutely nothing once the shit started hitting the fan. Like it's like they made us care, and they taught us about these characters, and we know these people, and then it just completely just wiped it all away and said, now we're going to have some fun and have an action flick of horror variety, which is fine. I was just kind of bummed that like the girl Emily, she didn't get to use any of her like knowledge to maybe do something to help them. I was bummed that the guy didn't have a redeeming moment. Like, maybe they were going to come out of this better. The older couple, I mean, they just vanish. I mean, they were there and they were strong characters. And then it was just like, well, he's going to go off and she just gets left behind until she dies. Like, it just seems like it was kind of a waste of character development for me. That's just my opinion. It turned into more of a fun, rompy horror flick at the end.
No, I agree with you. And they didn't really, like I said, they didn't use her knowledge other than she sort of understood what was going on around her.
Right.
She could kind of break it down a little bit and make it make sense to her, and try to explain it to everybody else. And then the only other thing that I noticed that might have helped her was that she, because of where she was going to be studying, what she was going to study, she was going to have to take some scuba diving lessons. Or she had been taking some scuba lessons, which I think is what aided her in figuring out the scuba tanks or the air tanks down in the basement.
Yeah.
Other than that, other than that little piece of knowledge dropping in and helping her out, you're right. It really didn't matter.
Yeah. Which, again, that's just, it was kind of weird that they did focus on the beginning, and then it just kind of got, the movie just switched. I mean, it just kind of switched gears completely right up until the end.
Mm-hmm.
So which is fine. It was still a fun film to watch. I mean, let's face it, I don't think any of us are going over to Shudder to watch like, Oscar-worthy films. You go to Shudder because you want the fun horror. I mean, and they've got some great stuff on there. I've watched some really fun movies on there that have been, darker, and even some of the more funny stuff. And this is just right there with it. It's what I go to Shudder for, and I can see why they bought the rights to it. And I'm happy that this guy made a movie that people are getting to watch.
Yeah, same. It was a really good movie. And where it ended up, going into the end now, this is not only talking about, her character development not really mattering that much. The end is where, like you said, it fell apart, but the last like 5 minutes was where, for me, I was like, what just happened here? Like I would love to know, I want to know a little bit more of like what transpired. So, once she gets out of the basement and she has to make some hard decisions regarding her boyfriend. He turns. She has to take care of him, which is a good on her. Strong lead character, strong lead female character. Taking charge and doing what she has to do. She finds the keys and she gets out of there. Now, I think in conjunction with the fog being really thick, she was also being infected a little bit, and so her vision was blurring a lot, and so she was having a hard time driving. and she was just going all over the road until she eventually drove off the road and into a tree. And once she came to, she had already been in the fog for a while. And she tried to get out, and she crawled into some, still standing water. And then it just transitioned to her on the beach somehow. And her eyes were white. They were glossed over like the other zombies had at that point. And then the water just rushes over and she's gone. I don't understand that last like 5 minutes. I didn't understand it. I was so confused. I didn't understand what was going on. How did she get to the beach?
Well, and I guess they were on the coastline. So, I mean, I guess she was just driving and it's pretty easy. I mean, how did she get to the beach?
She definitely did not end up on the beach.
I see what you're saying.
Out of the car.
Yeah. Well, see, I thought because she got out of after she hit the tree and she comes out of the vehicle and she ends up in this pool of water. I was so a few times in this movie, I was trying to make more out of a situation than it was. Like when I met the older couple at first, I thought that she had found like some sort of freshwater, like, pool, some sort of something that maybe was going to be somehow uncontaminated by this thing, and she was going to be able to survive the night there, and the sun would come up and this thing would have blown through and been gone. And like, I was waiting for the redemption moment. That's exactly the same thing I was thinking. Yeah. But no, we get a cut of her in this dark night, and then she's laying on the beach and the water rushes. She's saying, don't be afraid. And then she's gone. Yeah. If there's a meaning to that end, I completely missed it 100%. So at this point, I can only just assume that the world is ending and everybody's going to die because all our main characters are now dead as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it was not a good ending. No. But they didn't end it strong with the photography again. Oh yeah. They did a great job going back to the photography. They did this so there's macro photography where you can get really close to something, and then there's micro photography where you can do photography and videography of like things that you would see in a microscope. And it looked like they overlaid a lot of that over top of the water. Yeah. Which made this like really, trippy looking water and, fading in and out. That was really cool. Yeah. Yeah. It was. Was it in the beginning, they showed some rock in the ocean that was like just flowing all of this stuff out of it. Yeah. Underwater. Yeah. Yeah. Was that, do you think, going back to like Color of Space, do you think that was the asteroid, maybe a meteor that had hit, fallen in and finally degraded enough to the point where it was releasing stuff into the ecosystem? You think it was like really like that pinpointed on Color of Space? I don't know. I mean, they really did seem like what we were seeing was the cause of everything that happened. I mean, otherwise I don't know why they would go through the effort of creating that shot. Right. Right. So yeah, I don't know if that's what it was, or if, there's, how many horror films over the years have started with something emerging from a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor. Right. I mean, that's the thing too. So I don't know what caused it, but clearly that was the catalyst. I don't know what it was or how it happened, but yeah, it was still a cool shot. I like that. To wrap this up. Okay. This was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. I liked the characters. I thought it was kind of a waste of characters at the end, like I said, but I enjoyed the movie. It was fun. It didn't, take itself too seriously. It wasn't very long. I recommend it. I mean, if you want just a nice, quick, easy horror movie to watch, one night, you don't have to think a whole lot about, this is it. I think this is fun. I think this movie deserves a little bit more credit than what it's been getting, just based on user reviews that I've seen so far, and certainly any critic reviews. But I enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, I had seen some negative comments about it, on Twitter from some people that I follow that I do, appreciate their opinion, people that I enjoy. They've created stuff that I've consumed and enjoyed. And I disagree. I went into it. I went into this, like you said, with my expectations actually lowered a little bit than what I thought initially. And I should have just gone in for myself clear and blank and made my own opinion to start with, because I enjoyed it. Would I watch it again? Probably not, but I enjoyed it.
I did too. It was a good movie. I definitely recommend it as well.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
All right. Solid. If I was going to give a rating, what did I give Relic? What was it? A 7?
I don't know.
I forget now. I'd give this a 7.5.
Okay. Whatever I gave Relic, I give this twice as much. Okay. So I feel so bad about talking so much crap about Relic, because I've only listened to the first half of it, but the Film Riot podcast, they had the writer director of Relic on. I listened to it, and she seems lovely, and it's an interesting story to hear about the movie.
I listened to that too.
And I that's the thing about like ever vocalizing a negative opinion about something that somebody put so much blood, sweat, and tears in. I mean, if you don't feel crappy about that after the fact, I think there's something wrong with you. So,
right.
And I know how hard this is to make anything, but I just, at the end of the day, if I don't enjoy it, like, I'm not going to come on this podcast and tell the listeners, oh yeah, this is a great movie, go watch it. I'm giving you my opinion. So,
and that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, because I bet you people are just rushing to line up to get our opinions on movies. But
yeah, anyway. I'm sure of it.
We're informing the masses. Anyway, yeah, this was fun. Just like most movies you find on Shudder, it was fun. And you know what? If Jeffrey Brown wants to make another movie, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to check it out.
I'm definitely, him being in the industry for so long and this being his first feature, I'm a little shocked, but I really hope he makes another. Yeah. I hope he continues on this new road of his.
I'd like to see Leanna Liberato in some more stuff. I thought she was fantastic.
She was a really strong character. Yeah, I liked her in this movie too.
So, all right. Jason, do you have anything else to say about The Beach House?
I do not.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 21 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. We've discussed The Beach House. If you enjoyed the podcast and want to do us a huge favor, leave us a rating or review on the podcast network of your choice. We'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Bye.